All right, everyone. Appreciate you being here on the Big Ten Live Show. We come your way each and every Friday. Sorry for seeing double marks there. It's kind of like double Elvis. Who's the famous? Who's the famous painter, artist? Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol. Double Elvis. Double mark tonight. Welcome in the Big Ten Live Show. Appreciate you all being here. All right. Comments, questions are welcome. Phone calls as well. We're going to take our first one here in just a second. Somebody has jumped on the line quickly. Like to see that. We had anticipated and planned on doing a show with Tony Altimore. And so that's not Tony's fault that he's not here. We had to have a change of plans based on my schedule. And therefore, we will catch up with Tony next week. If you care anything about college football from a national scale, I understand this is a Big Ten show, but we did an ACC show where we lined up specifically Clemson, Miami, Florida State, and North Carolina. Check it out. It's on the Clemson, Miami, and Florida State channels. Great show with Tony Altimore last week, or just a couple days ago, looking at realignments, comparing the schools, the cultures, the academics, the athletic budgets, everything across the board, anything you could possibly want to know concerning those schools and how they stack up for realignment. We had planned to do the same tonight, targeting USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon. We will catch up with that next week, whether that's on the Big Ten Live Show or on a special day and time. All right, a few things I wanted to hit on tonight in a change of plans. So it's not expecting on doing much, but I wanted to look at the 2025 commits. A lot of guys that have come in just in the last 24 to 48 hours. Some big time players committed to Big Ten teams. So we wanted to look at that. Also, yeah, I put the Rose Bowl behind me. I put that on the thumbnail. I had some thoughts about the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl will never be the same. So a lot of the expansion and the college football playoff and realignment, some of that's interesting. It's intriguing. It's good. It's good for the sport. It's good for fan interaction. It's good for the fringe fan who is used to the playoffs being the focal point of any sports season. But there are some drawbacks to this, and the Rose Bowl is a sacrificial lamb and all this. And really, the Rose Bowl's not been the same for many of you who are under 35 years old. You've not experienced the Rose Bowl at the degree that the rest of us experienced the Rose Bowl. It's not been the same since Washington State and Oklahoma took the field in 2002. All right, I've got an Athlons magazine here as well. Possibly, unless the discussion and debate here is just so riveting that we have just a heated discussion about something, we may delve into the Athlons college football. Phil Steele, I don't know when his magazine's coming out, but I've got the electronic version, so that should be arriving sometime soon. I picked on Athlons a little bit today. I will show that on Twitter. And I also had some thoughts about Will Howard and whether he is the guy to lead Ohio State to a national championship this year. All right, let's get to the lines. We've got our buddy Nick on the line. Nick, thanks for being here.
Hey, Mark. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I wanted to ask you real quick. You brought up that Phil Steele. Do you normally get the electronic version of it?
No, I've never gotten it before.
Okay, because I was going to ask you if you had. I was going to wonder if it came with like what's the incentive of getting the electronic? Like if you get anything extra or.
So I looked at it a couple weeks ago and I decided to go electronic, and there were like 3 different tiers, and I got the second of the 3 tiers. I can't explain to you why at this point. These are the kind of decisions in life that don't stick with me more than 5 minutes, because there's just so much more that's more important. But I made my decision. I ordered what I ordered, and then I got a bunch of emails from him, and I thought it was available, but something else was available and not the regular magazine yet, from what I could determine. So I was so starved to look up a few things. I went and got Athlons last night, but in terms of Phil Steele, and we should have Phil Steele on here in the next month, as we typically do every summer.
Okay, and then I've never actually gotten his book before. I've heard really good things about it, but correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't it basically every college football team just break down like pretty much everything you can imagine?
Yes, you're basically reading a book in code. So that's the first thing you have to be prepared for, is that you are basically, yes, you are not reading a regular book or magazine in terms of it having regular sentences. There is a code that lasts probably a half a page. NG means this, FPI means that, A27 means that. You've got to learn the code because everything's condensed. So if you've got 2 pages on Michigan, it's really the equivalent of 15 pages on Michigan. So
Okay.
it's a great resource. It's a cool resource. I highly recommend it. For it being only $20, and I just spent $15 on this Athlon. And I don't know if that it's $20. It was $20 at one point. It might be a couple dollars more than that, but it's certainly worth it compared to the other magazines.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I'm actually gonna just go ahead and bite the bullet this year and snag it. Why not? For $20, it's not that bad. Did you happen to watch the interview Joel Klatt did with Sharon Moore? Did you happen to catch that yet?
I did not.
Do you really follow Joel, like his coaching interviews that closely?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I don't consume much college football content, to tell you the truth.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're busy producing.
I just don't. I create my own. And part of it is, if I wanted to claim to be just a completely principled person, this is true, but this isn't 100% true, because sometimes people will fill in the answer for me at times that say, well, we know why you don't do it, Mark. It's because you want to not be influenced by other people's opinions, so you can keep yours clean and pure and to yourself, and not regurgitate what anybody else says. And that is partly true, but it's also just because I just don't have a lot of interest.
Okay, fair enough. And
Joel Klatt's great, by the way. So I'm not demeaning him in any such way.
Yeah, you're good. Anyway, so interesting tidbit here. Apparently, Kirk Campbell said, or first of all, I can get to that next, but I've actually switched my opinion a little bit. I still think Alex Orji is going to end up being the starter for Michigan this year. However, and I've wondered this, but now I've pretty much, in my mind at least, confirmed he's going to get like a real shot. Davis Warren, I was a bit surprised by this, but apparently Kirk Campbell said Davis Warren's mechanics as a passer was better, or is better, than J.J. McCarthy. So I don't know if that's him just, hyping up his guy, but and I don't know how much you know about Davis Warren, but he would have been a highly rated recruit, like a high 4-star recruit, if he wouldn't have had his battle with cancer in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that happened during his junior year, so he did have his senior year, but obviously with that going on, he couldn't go to camps, all that kind of stuff. So I've kind of wondered this, but I'm curious if he could be Michigan's type of, now I'm not going to say, I don't want to be disrespectful, but just a guy that I'm thinking he could remind me of when I've watched him play in limited action. Maybe that type of Stetson Bennett-y. Obviously, he's not going to win 2 national championships. Stetson Bennett was an elite decision maker. But I don't know. What are your thoughts? It kind of, are you firmly in the camp of believing that Alex Orji is going to be the starter, or would it be very surprising to you if a senior like Davis Warren really rose up in fall camp?
All good questions here. So this is where I stand on this. So I watched the spring game, and I'm very much of the thought that based on the situation at most camps, that the spring game is simply our access to the team. It's not anything special in regards to giving us more information than the other scrimmages that are under lock and key that we don't get to see. So let's not, on one hand, let's not make anything more out of it than what it is. But on the other hand, it is our look into the football team. And so I was on Michigan podcast, and Steve Dace framed the quarterback question to me. And this was right after the spring game. And it just came out of my mouth. And it has proven to be my first point in all of this, is that based on the spring game, if these quarterbacks are as close as they appeared in the spring game, of course, we know that their skill sets are different, but close in regards to when you put it all together, that I think this is more about Michigan determining what kind of offense that they want to run versus who's the best quarterback. So if, let's say, Davis Warren, who is, from my understanding, I was listening to the Michigan show last night, and I've also picked this up from a few other sources, Davis Warren, a better athlete than maybe a number of people give him credit for. So maybe the athleticism gap isn't as large as we think it is, but we generally think Warren and Tuttle passers, orgy runner, that Michigan needs to decide, what do we want our offense to look like? Because based on the spring game, I don't think there is a clear-cut favorite. So what do they want to do with their offense? If they want to run a traditional Michigan offense that's heavy on running the ball and play action passing, of course, you get arguably the best tight end in college football, then I would lean Davis Warren. Yeah, arguably.
Who else is in that conversation?
I would say Brant Keith off the top of my head from Utah.
I've never even heard of the guy.
Are people's playing abilities predicated on who you know and don't know?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
All right. So anyway, so I think that's more about it than maybe the best player. Of course, you want the best player to be in the lineup. And then the other thought is, and this is an old line of thinking at this point, but I will state that I stated this before, at least. I'm not saying I was the first one to state it, but I was the first one that I knew of. I'd never heard it from anyone else, that sometime mid to late last season, I thought, okay, Michigan 2024, are they going to look like Alabama 2023-24? Jalen Milroe. Is Alex Orji, can he be Jalen Milroe?
Oh, no.
Oh, he's not going to be that good?
No, I just think deep ball. I would find it hard to believe that Alex Orji would be nearly as accurate.
That's a great point. That's a great point, because people think deep ball and they just think who's got the arm to get it there. And that's not the case. He has the arm to get it there, but there is a accuracy component.
Now, the good news is if he surprises people and he is good at it and gets rapport with his wide receivers, you probably got to play. You can make the playoffs with a guy like that, because Alabama didn't have an elite wide receiver group last year, and they didn't have an elite tight end. They got it done. So, I mean, they had a lot more 4 and 5 stars, but just as far as the quarterback play, you can make the playoffs and compete, potentially win a championship with a quarterback who ain't that good or isn't that good at intermediate, consistent passing. So, I don't know. We'll see. It would just surprise me if he turned out to be that much of a threat throwing the ball down the field. But I could be wrong.
If your team's as good as it's been the last few years, and especially last year, then you're right. But there are only a couple programs, and Ohio State may not even be one of them. It may just be Michigan, Alabama, Georgia that could get away with that.
Yeah, the main reason why I say that is because I actually think our defense, I don't know where this, I guess I haven't heard this narrative too much. I heard it a little bit right after the national championship game, but it seems like now people have had a time to pull their heads out of their butts and realize, like, okay, Michigan's actually going to be returning a really good defense. I'm not going to say it's going to be as good of a defense as last year because that's a national championship level defense, but I think our defensive line is the top end. I think it's going to be better. Not going to be, they're not going to have as much depth, but they will have some depth that's going to surprise some people. I actually think the other thing, though, that could benefit Alex Orji, I think our wide receiver, I don't know if you consider this a hot take, I think our wide receiver group is going to be better this year than it was last year. That's my gut feeling. I don't have a ton to go off of that, just a little bits and pieces I've seen here and there. And if you combine that with expecting guys to take the next step forward in their development, which there's no reason to think otherwise at this point, I think as a unit, they're going to be better. Mostly because I think they're going to be more balanced. But again, I could be wrong in that. And lastly, too, I've heard Steve's take, and I don't know if you've addressed this. I think he is way off on the quarterback situation. He seems to clearly think that Michigan, I don't want to say screwed up, but should have hit the portal to get a guy. And number one, it's like, well, who were they ever going to go get? There were two guys that I was in the camp of Michigan looking at. If they hit the portal, one of them would have been Miller Moss, and then the other one was who's Iowa State's quarterback? Rocco something.
Rocco Becht.
Yeah, those two guys I was interested in, and I was thinking, okay, there's a possibility because I think at one point there were some rumors that those guys might hit the portal, but there's rumors with almost every quarterback might hit the portal, it seems like. But yeah, so that's my I think it's definitely gonna hinge on the quarterback. I do disagree with you a little bit on it makes sense that you would believe it depends on what kind of offense Michigan is gonna want to run. I don't think that's the coach's mindset. I think they're going to put the most complete quarterback on the field, whoever they think is the best. And I also don't think they're going to be, they'll run the ball a lot, but I think their concepts behind passing the ball, I think Kurt Campbell is going to be more willing to take 50-50 shots down the field with whoever's at quarterback. When he was offensive coordinator for, it was either 1 or 2 games earlier in the season last year, their passing game looked, at least in my opinion, quite a bit different or noticeably different. So again, we'll see. I just found it really interesting that the offensive coordinator would come out and say, not just that Davis Warren has a stronger arm, which he also said that. Like when those guys lined up and just threw for distance, apparently Davis Warren consistently was able to throw it farther than JJ. But I know some people would say he's just blowing smoke, but I don't think he's that type of guy. I don't know. When just hearing that situation, do you think he's just kind of trying to get the fan base excited, or do you think there's some legitimacy, like that he's actually seen evidence that a guy like Davis Warren has better mechanics than JJ? That doesn't mean he's better or a better prospect by any means, because he's not. But I don't know. Or do you just think he's blowing smoke?
I don't think he's blowing smoke. And this is the reason why, is that he can certainly talk about his players and build them up and try to make them look really good to the fan base, talking about players that haven't proven anything. But for him to take a legend in the program And to make that comparison, I think would be foolish. Plus, obviously, at some point, if Davis Warren wins the job, we're all going to see what kind of arm talent he has downfield. So I don't know why he would go to be that specific about it. He could say all the right things about Davis Warren's development, how he's picking up the offense, how he makes the right reads and the right decisions, blah, blah, blah. And that his arm strength is good enough, or he can make all the throws we need him to make. He could phrase it that way. But for him to make that type of statement, I would think it's legitimate.
Okay. And are you more leaning in the camp of Michigan making the 12-team playoff than not? And if so, or if not, what games besides Ohio State are you circling thinking this is going to determine it for them?
So let me go back to something that you said about the way Michigan's going to play on offense and how much Kirk Campbell's going to call passing plays and what that ratio is going to look like and how open they're going to be. I think that while we all know all the obvious advantages to playing an easy non-conference schedule, the advantage to playing a difficult non-conference game like they will is that they're going to come out of that game and know who they are. They're going to have a much better knowledge of who they are against national competition. Therefore, I think that's going to not dictate, but it's going to give them a lean toward, well, did we survive in this game and win 30-27 and Quinn Ewers gave us 3 gifts and we survived and our defense isn't quite what we thought it was, or whatever that narrative is coming out of the game. And then they will be able to adapt to know how much can we trust the quarterback. How good is our offensive line and running game? How good is the defense? We know it's good. It's going to be really good. But is it great? Is it near what it was last year? All of those things. I think that they can take that forward then and know a little bit better what they want their identity to be in that way. Now, when it comes to the 12-team playoff, I don't understand this discarding of Michigan by certain people in any way, shape, or form. I think they're going to be in the running
Michigan
for the
State
playoff.
and Ohio State fans. That's what it's called.
I guess I think that there are other people out there that have no dog in the hunt that seem to just think that, well, if you lost your quarterback, you lost one of the best coaches in college football and you got 13 guys drafted, then you must not, and you are in the 10 to 15 range in recruiting and not a top 3 or 4 recruiting power, then they just, and it makes sense. If you said that about most programs, you just lost the top 10 quarterback in the NFL draft. You're replacing him with a nobody who's proven anything. You've got a head coach who's arguably the best in college football. You lost him and you lost 13 players to the NFL draft, and you're not a recruiting giant like Georgia or Alabama. How good are you going to be this year? And it's an improved Big Ten.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people in those camps, okay, the improved Big Ten is legitimate, but I haven't seen too many people weigh heavily into that. I think most of those people in those camps have been doubters of Michigan this whole time. I not all, but I mean, Michigan hasn't been a great, an elite recruiting power this entire run. And a lot of those people who probably say Michigan isn't going to make the playoffs this time around probably were saying J.J. McCarthy's not a championship-winning quarterback, which I'm not crushing them at the time. Fine. If you want to believe that, that's okay. But I don't know. I think most of those people just are, I don't want to say haters. That's a little strong. But they're doubters now, and they were doubters before. I guess that's kind of all I'm saying. Not everybody. I'm sure there's a few, but if you look under the hood, you can pretty quickly see that the traditional requirements to win a national championship, Michigan is a bit different and did it differently.
Yes.
So
true.
That's all.
I'm looking at the schedule, and I see it this way. That any team in the Big Ten or the SEC, especially a team that's playing Texas in the non-conference, that goes 10-2 is obviously in. 9-3, you could get in if you're impressive. If you are playing the best teams in the country, i.e., if that's Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State, and they live up to expectations, even if you lose a couple of those games, if you are playing them well, that's a huge consideration. It's not just the record. It's going to be if they go 9-3 and let's say they trip, I think it may even be, let's say USC's good. Let's say USC's 9-3 good. And they lose 3 out of those 4 games, but they perform well in all the games, they could reach the playoffs. I just think that they are probably a 75% certainty to 80% of beating USC. And then the other 3 games are in the toss-up range. And so I don't see them losing all 3 of those games.
Yeah. Yeah, I think right now I would predict, oh, it's tough. 9-3. I'm going to guess 10-2 at this point. I think they're going to get one of the big 3, Oregon, Texas, Ohio State. In fact, I actually think if they do go 9-3, I don't think those are going to be the 3 teams they lost to. Because they do. I'm pretty certain they'll beat Washington, but it's still a road game. It's still a tough place to play. So yeah, we'll see. They don't play Penn State. Penn State's, don't they have kind of a cupcake schedule this year? A bit.
Penn State. Well, let's see. That rings a bell. I believe you're correct in that. But
I think they play Oregon. Is that their toughest game?
Penn State has in the Big Ten, Iowa at home, at Ohio State, Michigan. Oh, I'm sorry. No. Sorry. Looking at last year. In the Big Ten, at USC, at Wisconsin, Ohio State at home.
Washington.
Yeah, I'm not a big believer in Washington. I'm going to have to see it. Jed Fish is a good coach.
I'm not saying I'm certain Michigan will win that game. I'm just saying traveling across the country, it's there's reason to not think that that's just going to be a walk in the park, but that's just me. Maybe Michigan will blow them out. But yeah, really, if you look at Penn State's schedule, the only 2 games they should be in danger here would be USC and Ohio State.
At Wisconsin?
Is it Van Dyke?
Yes.
Is he there? Is he expected to take a step forward? Or I haven't tracked Wisconsin very closely, so I couldn't say.
I will tell you this. I trust the Wisconsin coaching staff and culture above Miami at this point. So if he can get fixed, then I will take him at Wisconsin over Miami.
That's a low bar, though. Do you trust Wisconsin's coaching staff over Penn State's coaching staff? I mean, Miami's an incredibly low bar. Haven't they had like top 6 recruiting classes the last 3 years, and they stink? Like that's almost been malpractice what they've been doing down there.
Well, we'll see if they stink this year, but you're right. I trust Luke Fickell over James Franklin, not by a ton.
What do you think of the Tom Allen?
Oh, I think Tom Allen is a really good pickup. I don't know that he's better than Manny Diaz, though. Manny Diaz is one of the best defensive coordinators in college football.
Interesting. Statistically, or like do you actually think in game he's really good?
Oh, I think he's really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's what got him a head coaching job now twice.
He's a bit aggressive at the wrong times, but every DC has that here and there. Okay. And then lastly, first of all, I'll go down on the record saying I think Michigan's going to beat Texas. One of the reasons why I'm banking on it is because I think Michigan's defense, like their ceiling, I think is actually going to be. I don't think they'll be as consistent throughout the year. There's a couple reasons for that. I think by the end of the year, their depth will have developed enough where they'll be close to what they were this last year. But I think their star power is going to be better. And I also think I the thing I can't get over about that game is, and you can tell me if you disagree with this, but if a guy like Michael Penix, and I'm not saying this is, you can poke holes in this, but this is just my thought process. A guy like Michael Penix, cool, calm, and collected all year last year, except for there was one game, was it against Arizona State? There was a weird game he had where he played bad. I think it was on the road against a terrible team.
Yes.
And
Arizona State at home.
yeah, okay. So yeah. But for the most part, cool, calm, and collected, even under pressure, which we saw against Texas. If Michigan can make him panic, which I think they did. Okay, some people are going to say, well, he had his ankle knocked, he was partially injured and all this. And yeah, okay, fine. That played a part in it, but he was clearly rattled. Like some of his decision making was bad. And I don't know. I think Quinn Ewers, he seems to me very prone to making some just ditzy decisions, especially if you can get him under pressure. Like he'll throw up some balls where you're just like, what are you doing? At least for me. I'm not saying he's bad or anything, but I just can't get over. Now, if Texas' offensive line holds up, which I'm assuming, aren't they? They should
They
have
have a great offensive line.
Yeah. So it'll come down to that. But I can't get over Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant because I don't know. That's a different animal. And I think if those guys can get pressure up the middle and push that pocket right into his lap like they did against Michael Penix, and, Washington's offensive line last year wasn't a slouch, obviously, Joe Moore. I don't know. I could easily see Quinn Ewers throwing 3 picks in that game. And if Michigan gets pressure with their defense, I think it's going to be over early. And I don't know. So that's my thought. I could be wrong. Maybe Texas's offensive line holds up, And if Texas jumps out to an early lead, then it's going to be tough. But
well, practically the sole reason why Texas is a 3 or 4 point favorite, something like that, is because Quinn Ewers is back and JJ McCarthy is not back. If JJ McCarthy was back and Texas was replacing Quinn Ewers, then you would see a complete reversal of that, even more so on Michigan's side.
Okay.
So that's what I believe, that's what Vegas is banking on. Not that Texas doesn't have a complete team and have really good pieces elsewhere, but they are, at least until proven otherwise, they have lost 2 of the best interior defensive linemen to the NFL draft. Michigan will try to pound them first and foremost.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be a fun matchup. I'm really looking forward to that. No cupcake schedule this year, so that's great. Well, except, yeah, I'm not going to go there. But and then lastly, real quick, have you commented on this little Urban Meyer situation with BJ Johnson? I don't know if you've given your thoughts on that.
I don't know what the situation is with BJ Johnson and Urban Meyer. What am I missing?
BJ Johnson came out and said Urban Meyer, when he was recruiting him at his high school, pulled him in a room and just asked him how much. Like, how much money do you want? And this was before NIL.
Okay, so not to defend Urban Meyer, but it sounds like, if that is true, which we don't know it's true, that Urban Meyer was doing something that, based on the responses and the feedback I get from all of you on a fairly regular basis, was just doing what coaches are doing anyway, and we're doing at the time. And I'm not justifying it.
Yeah, but he's the one who was singled out. I mean, you don't hear you don't hear so and so coming out and saying Lincoln Riley offered me this. You know, other coaches did it, but do you believe him? Do you believe this guy, or do you think
I
he's?
don't know anything about him.
I don't either, but it was gaining traction, so I wanted to get your.
Well, a lot of things gain traction, but so how long ago was this?
I think it was just in the last. I mean, did it surprise me? No. The only reason, though, why this kind of stuff is just hilarious to me is when fans and fan bases try to falsely make this notion like there's this higher standard or moral in college football when it's really just about winning, like at the end of the day.
Yeah, I
So,
find it amusing anytime that a particular team is having issues, whether that was Michigan at this time last year or whomever, that other fan bases gloat in that. And I get it because it's easy to do. And then you can say, well, you won because of this, this, and that. But in terms of the what skeletons are in your program's closet, I don't think anyone has any room to talk or be blindsided or shocked when they find something out about their team and their coach and their program.
yeah. I'm just saying it's funny because you at least I've heard the noise of, especially with the Michigan stuff of last year, people just speculating themselves to death and overblowing and exaggerating and speculating and all this kind of stuff when the actual facts, we still don't even know a whole lot of it. Which, you want to know something interesting? And I want to ask you this and then I'll let you go. Why, if, was it Tony Petitti who said this is the worst scandal in the history of college football, or some nonsense like that? He came out and said that, or we heard he said that, or he was quoted, or something. And from what Isaiah Hull has said, the NCAA was in fact wrongfully leaking things about that case that they did not and do not have proof of. But I just wonder why, if it's one of the worst scandals, if it's what was the phrase people were using? It ruined the integrity of college football. Like all this totally ridiculous, just over emotional, effeminate nonsense.
I love some of these descriptive words you attach to it.
It's just I just can't wrap my mind around it when people are acting like that with their panties so bunched up and they have like none of the real facts. And I'm not saying I do, but let's just be a little bit more honest about what's going on. Why, if it really was one of the worst scandals, and I think we can all admit that a big component was the NCAA and Jim Harbaugh were going at it a little bit, or at least the NCAA. That played a part. Don't know how big of a part, but it played a part. They did not, the NCAA, from Isaiah Hull and some other guys who are credible, at least from what I've seen, did not even contact or attempt to contact Connor Stallions until like a month or two ago. Now, I just want to know if the whole theory, if someone really believes that this was one of the worst scandals that ruined the integrity of the game and all this other just complete nonsense, like there haven't been way worse scandals, if we're being honest.
But when was the last time somebody cheated during the competition, like directly affecting and impacting the game on the field?
I don't know. I don't know. You could say if you're playing an ineligible player. So
okay, well, that's why I was making a distinction there, because I'll let you get back to your train of thought. This is why when I make all-time rankings and I list out numbers of wins and those sorts of things, I make a distinction between cheating scandals, or scandals, I should say, scandals at places like Penn State 10 years ago with Jerry Sandusky, and then ones that involve cheating to recruit a player, keep a player eligible, all those things to gain an advantage on the field. The Sandusky and other things, throw that away. That's a criminal situation.
Yeah, I just
the
want to
authorities
clarify.
take care of that.
I just want to clarify. I thought it was assumed. I wasn't even. I that's not what I was referencing. Like, I don't even like to talk about those kind of scandals. They're best left in the past.
No, but I'm also making a distinction between what I just cited, that players' grades were changed or whatever was done to
fake
keep
classes
them eligible, versus on-field cheating. And I don't know, however else you could do it, maybe in Bill Belichick fashion.
Well, the cheating thing, that's a narrative at this point, and that's what some people believe. I don't know for sure. I don't have all the facts. I don't know for sure.
Well, wait a minute. We do have some facts. So I'm not going to make a final determination on any of this, and I have yet to do so until we get the final say from the NCAA, and hopefully it's accurate. And I, as surprised to some, I want Michigan to be completely exonerated, and I want that we have no questions in terms of how these games were won. That's what I want. But I ultimately just want the truth, and whatever the truth is, that's what I hope is being brought to the surface. But we do know that Connor Stallions cheated.
Did the NCAA say that? Did they come out? Have they said that a specific rule has been broken? Did that come out officially?
Yes, we know that. We know that. That's why the Big Ten acted. And we know that the NCAA has released information to say that this individual cheated himself. Now,
that
how
was
widespread, and let's forget about the effectiveness of the cheating, because I know that that's probably going rampant right now in the chat in terms of, did it matter? Let's forget that for a second. Let's say it had absolutely no effect on the outcomes of these games. Zero. Didn't matter. And football people even argue about that. You hear credible football people argue about that or give varied opinions on how much that would have helped or just simply didn't matter. So put that aside. Yeah, we know that Connor Stallions cheated and he was on the Michigan coaching staff.
Yeah, I guess my question is, when I originally read the rule, I didn't think he did, the way I interpreted it, because it's a poorly written rule. I interpreted the rule, and we don't need to completely hash this out. I'm just saying, from my mindset, from what I read the rule, to me, I assumed, or the way I read it, was that there was no one on the coaching staff or on Michigan's staff who was in-person scouting. They were getting material from people who were not who were not part of the football program. And that rule didn't specify that. It doesn't. You can read it.
Yes, they may have circumvented that in such a way, but you were basically accomplishing the same thing.
Yeah, it's material. It's materially the same thing. Just like coaches giving other teams in the next week all their information on signs. It's materially the same thing, yet that's apparently accepted. I mean, you either have someone signs or you don't. And it's advanced scouting or it's not. I'm just saying.
No, it's how you acquire the signs. That's the issue.
And yeah, but it's materially the same thing. I mean, let me just ask you this question. Would you rather get all of the information from coaches who are making millions, who have staffs who are dedicated to stealing another team's signs? or would you rather get like grainy cell phone footage? I mean, it's material.
Well, yeah, you know the answer to that. So
I'm
yes, I
just
would
saying,
rather have football people that know what they're doing and know the game and that have first rate equipment giving me the material.
all I'm saying is this: if someone wants to say Michigan was cheating, fine. Then show me. I want to see all the facts, all the information laid out. Show me everything. If you can't, that's fine too. But then it's just an opinion.
So you're telling me that the Big Ten suspended Jim Harbaugh for 3 games for nothing?
I think what the Big Ten was ridiculous, and I think it was wrong. I don't think you should be able to do that with an ongoing investigation. And some people can come in and say, well, they were cheated, like it was happening in real time and all of this. And that's pretty complicated. You could break it down, but I don't think Tony Petitti handled that the right way. And I don't know. There's a lot of questions. I don't have the evidence, but from what I've heard of what really went down, they did not have the evidence to do what they did. And I've heard that from very credible people.
Have you heard it from credible people outside of Michigan circles?
That's a good question. I'd say no at this point, but the people who I have heard it from in credible circles, if they're wrong about that, they could lose. They probably should lose their job, honestly. So, and the people who I've heard it from, yes, they're in Michigan circles, but they're also national. They're national too. So, I mean, we can go in circles about that. I'm just saying there's a lot that we don't know yet. If you want to say they're cheating, fine. I'm not going to continue to argue that, but
No. Let's make a distinction. I never said they were cheating.
no,
I said
not
that
you.
Connor Stallions cheated.
Yeah. So cheating, whatever that means, breaking a rule. I don't know. Apparently it's not cheating when you illegally pay players, but it is when you get grainy cell phone footage. It's not cheating. It's cheating when you buy a recruit.
Well, of course it's cheating when you bought a recruit before months ago. Now it's not, but of course it was cheating. Just certain teams and players and coaches never got caught.
Okay.
We've got a long history in the NCAA of coaches getting fired, suspended, programs being put on probation for paying players or for
SMU.
Yeah, we have all sorts of now. Did enough players and coaches get caught? No.
So yeah, I guess the way I would word it right now, until we get the details, the facts, which, I mean, and let me just be honest, there's been a lot of guys like on other shows who say Jim Harbaugh knew he was cheating, Michigan cheated, they only won a national chip. I mean, you just go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, well, that's slander.
But
I'm not
of
going to do that.
Yeah, but a lot of people are doing it, and it's gotten out of control, in my opinion. At this point, I think if you want to say Connor Stallions cheated, fine. He probably did. So I don't have an issue with that. But I do think it's what you can say for sure, or what would be the most responsible thing to say, is do coaching staffs, are these guys the most competitive, egomaniac freaks on the planet? Some of them, if not most of them, yes. Will they try to find loopholes and gray areas to push boundaries and gain a competitive advantage? Absolutely. Did Connor Stallions find a rule and thought he was working his way around it, when in reality he just wasn't as smart as he thought he was, and he pushed it too far and he broke a rule, thus he cheated? That's probably what's going to be determined. But until I see all the facts and have a timeline of it, I'm not going to go very far with the whole cheating thing. Like,
it's we did a zillion live streams about it, and I shot videos and tried to do my due diligence, because I don't care what anyone says. I never step out of bounds when it comes to these types of serious issues to make accusations or drum up hysteria or any of that. I always stayed within this is what has been confirmed, this is what we know. And then if people wanted to ask me questions, or we wanted to go down a line of thinking of if this occurred, then what should the penalty be? Or if that occurred, or how would they have done this? If we want to play those games, and we did, then that was within the realm of the discussion. And then I would bring it back in and say, well, we don't know that. This is what we do know. And again, it's been so long, and I know it's not been in a sense that long. It was just last fall and winter, but it's been completely off my mind, because I basically got to a point where I said, on this show, on this channel, outside maybe a random conversation here and there, we are going to close. We are not going to get into this anymore until the NCAA hands down its findings. But again, I'm not going to promote myself as anywhere close to an expert on this topic, but I certainly looked into it a lot. I think I did my due diligence to understand what was fact, what was proven, what was confirmed, versus all the theories and philosophies of what it could have been or what it might have been. And I basically came to this determination. What we know is that Connor's Stallions cheated. And we know that a Michigan linebackers coach knew something at some point, it may have been at the very end of this situation, to have instructed Michigan football players to lie to the NCAA or mislead
No,
or hide evidence from the NCAA.
Yeah, that's a narrative. That's
a narrative.
No, it's the whole again. Did he instruct the players to lie, outright lie? From what I've heard and from what I know, and I would be very surprised if he did that. I don't think that's
fired.
Well, he got fired because he technically interjected himself, and from what I've heard, he told the players, do not tell the NCAA what you think happened, because you don't know. And because he said that or iterated that to them, he got fired, because it was a hot situation, like a very tense situation. I don't think he should have been fired. I don't think there was justification. But if other facts were to come out that he did instruct them to lie, then yeah. But also, from what I've heard too, the NCAA was trying to interrogate these players, and they didn't. They were wrongfully trying to interrogate these players, and they were trying to tell the players, like, you have to answer our questions, and you can't have a lawyer or any representation. So that whole thing was botched, from what I've heard. Now, are we going to know the truth behind that whole situation? Probably not. But
well, I'm glad that with most of these statements, Nick, you include from what you've heard or for whatever reports are out there.
I just want to know, and the only reason why I'm bringing this whole thing up is because I've heard way too much. It's kind of becoming on other shows, and I've just heard it kind of rumbling, well, Michigan definitely cheated, and that's why they won the title. It's kind of just being repeated enough, and it's like, okay, well, hold on. We don't know all the facts. So that's all I'm saying. I'm not even going to bring it up again until we learn more, but my main thing was, I thought it was kind of funny, where if this really was one of the most serious scandals, why would an institution or an organization like the NCAA wait until recently to interview the main guy? To me, that seems ass backwards, but I could be wrong about it. It's just weird. That's
if that is true, then I can't explain that either. I have no explanation for that. I don't know that he should have been the first, but he's the number one guy that you interview on the list. I don't know if you do it first, but he's the primary guy, and you don't wait until 9 months after you started the investigation.
Yeah. So, but we'll see. I'm like you. I hope, because of the media attention and because it got leaked to the media, and it never should have been, and it was turned into this big dramatic thing. I think the NCAA owes everyone a bit more transparency when they conclude their investigation. Like, we should find out what they knew, when. Like, are we probably going to get those answers? No, because it's the NCAA. And whether you think Michigan cheated or not, I think everybody believes the NCAA has a bunch of clowns. But
that's going to be the ruling that's going to count, of course, and it's going to be the one that we have to trust, unless there's some kind of outside investigation that looks into what the NCAA did to find fraud there.
yeah, I think that will depend on how they decide to punish Michigan. Clearly, Michigan wants to. From the AD, from the last investigation, it sounds like they just want to move forward, and that makes sense with Sharon. But I've heard some people saying, well, Sharon's going to get implicated. He's going to be suspended, and all this nonsense that, at least right now, is just over the top speculation. But I hope we get, I don't know, you experienced more or paid more attention to investigations in the past. Are you expecting just we're going to get some sort of main ruling, or do you think that we'll actually learn some of the more specifics?
Okay, so it's gonna be somewhere in between. What we're gonna get from the NCAA is we're gonna get a ruling that says that Michigan is, this is an example, folks, that Michigan is in violation of X, Y, and Z, and there's going to be some details released, and that's what it's been in the past. But it's not going to answer all of our questions. No, it's never been that in the past, but they will give some type of politically correct statement of what they did wrong, what they violated.
Yeah.
But they're not going to release, they violated this rule, and this is how it played out. On February 22nd, this happened. On June 9th, that happened. And then they did this, X, Y, and Z. That's not going to come from the NCAA.
No, I hope we find that out, though. I don't think that, I mean, if I was someone on the Michigan staff or someone, I would leak all that information with proof if you have it. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. But for all I'm saying is people need to pump the brakes a little bit on that, because that whole, it's really easy when you start throwing words around, not you, but when people start throwing words around, cheating, this, eventually it turns from Connor Stallion specifically broke an outdated rule because he was an idiot, and it gave Michigan a slight competitive advantage, to the whole program's dirty, strip them of their title.
Sure.
Like,
and for anyone that says, and you made this comment a few minutes ago, that says that Michigan won a national championship because they cheated, well, that's just an idiotic statement. You cannot draw conclusions in any such way, regardless of what you think. The play on the field cannot be questioned. That might be the case, but you can't say that was the case. You cannot say that the team was successful because of that. Even if they did cheat, even if Harbaugh knew, even if all of that took place, I will be the first one to say they should be punished to the hilt if this is widespread, rampant knowledge of it. Let's say the very worst thing I can think of is that we find out that Harbaugh initiated it. That was his plan to put in place. That would be the worst thing I can think of from a competitive standpoint. You still can't say that they won a national championship because they cheated.
Yeah, well, and that's and people have thrown this narrative too, which I think is pretty lazy. I mean, I understand it technically from a logic standpoint, but why cheat if it's not going to benefit you? And it's like, well, really? Did Michigan really need to cheat? We heard
Nick, you're talking to the wrong guy, or maybe the right guy for that statement. I said that from the very beginning.
All I was going to say, this is just a comment. All I was going to say is, are we really going to, after Michigan got railed for having like one of the softest schedule, like it's a softest schedule I've ever seen. Not saying you said that. I mean, yeah, you cheat because it gives you an advantage. But did
That's the only
Michigan
reason to cheat.
did Michigan need to cheat to beat Bowling Green? Like if Michigan was
Well, we
like,
don't believe that. No, of course not. They're 100 times better. But there is somebody, please, at some point, someone out there that's wiser than me, give me a reason that you cheat that doesn't involve giving you a better percentage chance of winning.
oh no,
There's no other reason to cheat.
I don't disagree with that. I said that. I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying it's very easy, not you, but it's very easy for someone to then say, take that logic or that reality, well, you cheated because it helped you win, and then go on to the next step and say, well, the only reason you were undefeated is because you cheated.
No, I would never say that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of other guys do. So
For me to say that, the ruling would have to come down to the extent that we just talked about, and then
yeah,
I would have to hear from 10 football experts, coaches that would say that would, and we would have to have details to the hilt that said, well, they got that sign in that game, and look at this formation. And that's not going to happen. And that's what I would have to hear to be able to say, wow, okay, they won those games because they cheated.
yeah, but like to the other, I mean, even if it was like football coaches, like you've said, like there's been football coaches on both sides
Yes.
who've come out, but like let's take Rick Neuheisel for an example. I think the dude's a clown. He came out on whatever show he was doing, and they did the whole JJ McCarthy. The segment was called Pre Stallions, Post Stallions, and they put up stats and we're trying to say, JJ McCarthy was better. At this whole just complete clown show, and then you find out Rick Neuheisel has a whole long history of beef with Jim Harbaugh, so he's totally biased. And
Yeah.
they didn't include the Michigan set, but that was a real segment on like CBS, or I don't know if it's CBS, but how do you air that? Like it's that kind of stuff where it's like you just, in my opinion, that stuff was happening a lot because people speculated themselves into oblivion. You can't do that when you don't have the facts. But
Not
yes,
if you're responsible.
yeah, and unfortunately, a ton of people aren't who have huge platforms, which is a shame. But I do think Connor Stallions broke the rule. Like I believe he did, but I think that he thought he was smarter than he was. Haha, I found my way around, a rule. And there's some other things we've learned about him where I don't think he was, how would you say, the most sound of mind, would you
Yeah.
say? So, but I'm interested to get some clarification. And one thing too, I really hope it doesn't take years to wrap up. I think that would be a huge mistake. I hope they get it wrapped up before the start of the season, but I don't know what you've seen investigations in the past. Are you kind of on that train where it's going to be a while before we learn, or do you think they'll come to do you think it's realistic that it could be wrapped up in the next 4 months?
I think our timeline is typically on these 2 years. I'm thinking of Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee. I'm thinking of Les Miles at LSU. I'm thinking of various ones that I didn't take note of, years later of how long it took, but it's like a couple years.
Okay.
But if they're interviewing Connor Stallions 9 months after that, they could have. I'm not going to say that they should have, because again, even though he's the most important person to interview, that doesn't mean he should be first. But like you, I find it weird that he would be interviewed this late in the game, because he'll probably give information that will require interviews with or follow up with other people.
Yeah. And I think they should as well. I mean, in an investigation like this, before you give a ruling, you need to learn everything. They have to learn, okay, who specifically was filming in those stands? Like, I don't think, does anyone know who those people were? Like, we know that Connor paid people, but does anyone know names? And the other thing too is, was Connor Stallions on Central Michigan's sideline? Have we learned that yet?
People have shown photos that make it looks like him, but that's never been confirmed as far as I know.
I'm just saying, there's so much we don't know, and I don't know. I like him being on the sideline would make a big difference. So I just
Sure.
But anyway, I wanted to say my piece on that. I've just been frustrated with people jumping ahead to the Michigan's dirty, strip them, take away wins, all this
sure.
stuff where if it's justified, fine. I mean, I'm a fan, but if they did do something that would warrant it, then do it and move on. But anyway, that's all I had to say. So thanks for taking my call.
Thanks, Nick. We appreciate it. I should have asked Nick for his latest Ohio State-Michigan score. Every time I see it, I think it expands by another Michigan touchdown. I think he's up to like a 45-point Michigan win. But we've got plenty of time to talk about that. All right. It is the Big Ten Live show, and it seems like it's become the Michigan NCAA investigation show. But we got the real MVP here.
Hey, Mark, how you doing this evening?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I mean, I just love the talk of the stallion, Mark. You should have put up a picture of a stallion horse in the background. I think that would have been perfect and funny. Mark, who employed Connor Stallions?
The University of Michigan.
Okay, and who's responsible for his behavior?
The University of Michigan.
Okay, so if he does something that breaks the rules, then who's responsible for those violations?
U of M.
Okay, so let me get this right. So it would be accurate to say Michigan cheated then. Or they employed a guy who broke the rules. Therefore, they are responsible for what happened.
They are responsible, but there should be a distinction, a very large distinction. You cannot imagine or conjure up a scenario in any industry where, let's say, you were the owner of a company and there was unscrupulous activity going on in one of your departments that you knew nothing about and it came to light. Yes, you're responsible for it, but that's completely different than if you masterminded and initiated the execution of some nefarious plan.
Right, but Mark, as a leader and the head of the organization, you are going to take the brunt of the action, especially when you hired the guy that did the illegal activities. Okay, not everyone at Lehman Brothers was doing stuff that was wrong. Not everybody at Enron was doing stuff that was wrong, but they all suffered the consequences. It's how it works in the world.
But I still think it's a different matter with different consequences.
I can agree with you there, but the general principle of, hey, listen, you're the organization. You hired this bad apple. He cheated. Therefore, it's inaccurate to say, no, you all cheated. I just can't say, well, he cheated. Therefore, Michigan didn't cheat. No, Michigan got benefits from Connor Stallion's cheating. That's just the way it
happened. I don't know that we'll get to this, but I want to know what happened with the information that he obtained.
I would like to know that too. I mean, I doubt we'll ever know anything because the NCAA is a completely spineless organization, in my opinion, and will do absolutely nothing about this investigation except literally nothing for 2 years, and then come out and say, well, he did cheat and Michigan won the 2023 national championship. Nothing of consequences coming from this. Can we at least agree on that?
Well, I can't agree that that's going to happen for sure because I've been surprised in the past, but I would tend to agree with you. Yes, I'm about close to 90% sure that there's not going to come enough of this to change anything significantly. No, a slap on the wrist.
Right, and this isn't just the first time Jim Harbaugh and the University of Michigan have been caught bending/breaking the rules, right?
True. This is again, it's a different deal in terms of in-game. Of course, it didn't happen in game, but I mean game preparation cheating. That's different.
I understand that, but it's you have an offender once, they're more likely to be a repeat offender, and that's unfortunately what Jim Harbaugh and the University of Michigan have on their shoulders. It's not like, just the God came down from the heavens and said, Michigan, you are going to cheat today. That didn't happen, as far as I'm concerned. So, Ohio State isn't dealing with this, Akron's not dealing with this. Why? Because they didn't cheat. It's okay. Michigan, if you want to blame somebody, blame the people who cheated. And don't be just this victim mentality of, oh my gosh, Mark, how could this ever happen to us? Just us poor souls. What did we do?
Well, that is definitely on a broader topic, whether it's Michigan or other sports situations or to the larger society, a great point that you just made. We are in the society where victims or, yes, the perpetrators become the victims, where they claim victimization. And yeah, that's insane.
Right? It's hard to be the victims when you are the victor of the national championship, Mark. And people just need to let this go. If Michigan lost to Alabama and didn't convert that 4th and 2, I think none of this would even be discussed. But since they did convert that 4th and 2, people care about it because Ohio State fans think there's some small chance that Michigan's title can be revoked. And I think they have pride in wanting to be the last Big Ten team to win the national championship.
Well, yeah, anytime Ohio State can have something taken away from Michigan or vice versa, they're all for it, of course.
Right. And I didn't say Michigan's the only team that cheated. The only thing I am going to say is Michigan's the only team that I know of then that's been caught multiple times since 2020. Every other team I believe every team cheats, but Michigan's the only one dumb enough to be caught. So that's your all's fault for being that incompetent. It's not my fault. It's not Mark's fault. It's yours fault. So be mad at your own administrators.
Absolutely. I would not be talking about Michigan cheating if they didn't cheat.
Right. Now, Mark, I want to talk to you about something completely unrelated. I want to talk about Northwestern football, okay? Because some people want to – I want to talk about other teams. So, have you seen the week 0, week 1 lines for all the teams?
Northwestern, who are they playing in week 1?
They're playing the mighty Miami of Ohio.
Okay.
And Northwestern is only a 3.5-point favorite.
At home, I assume?
Yeah, I guess it's at home. I know there are construction stadiums happening, so I don't know where it's being played exactly.
Yeah.
They're on the Vanderbilt plan.
Well, Northwestern has not just historically, because, of course, through much of the 1970s and 80s, they were just arguably the worst program in college football. Even when they've been decent over the last 10 or 15, 20 years, they lose to more middling programs in the G5 and the FCS than anybody else in the Big Ten, probably anybody else in football.
Right, but all I heard about last year was David Braun is this elite coach. David Braun took this team from 1 to 7. They beat Utah. They had this incredible season, and now they're barely favored over Miami of Ohio.
Well, you are putting projection and prediction and odds in the same basket as reality and achievement. I wouldn't do that. They achieved.
I believe there's a reason those buildings in Vegas keep getting bigger every time I go back there, Mark.
Yeah, but they can't control the point spread.
I understand, but they have to set a line somewhere. They just didn't throw a dart at a board and said it's 3.5.
Absolutely. There are metrics involved and smart people that put those together to make it difficult for us to win money against that line. True, yes. But let's understand that Pat Fitzgerald, I will say it this way. Guess how many times Pat Fitzgerald Northwestern teams appeared in the preseason top 25?
2.
The answer is 0.
Okay.
How many times do you think they finished in the top 25?
5.
Perfect. Nailed it. So this is a program that has historically overachieved.
I get that, and I hope they do overachieve. I'm not just hating on Northwestern because, if you give slight criticism to any team, you hate that team. My point is just I just saw that line and I was just shocked. Like, does Miami of Ohio have some dudes that I don't know about, or is Northwestern just lost everybody from last year? Because that
Miami of
seems like a
Ohio.
pretty far from grace to be that's like favored against Miami of Ohio.
I know they beat Cincinnati last year. Miami was pretty good last year.
Okay.
I don't know what they're supposed to be this year, but again, it's a MAC school. And the one that comes to mind is one of Northwestern's teams that went to the Big Ten championship game lost to Akron. So they do this quite often.
Yeah, I know. There was a stat they showed in the Minnesota versus Bowling Green bowl game that said it's been like outside the COVID year. It's been like since 2004 since the Big Ten went undefeated against the MAC team, all the MAC schools or something crazy like that. It's been a while. Which is kind of embarrassing for your conference, by the way, if you all want to compete against the SEC to lose to MAC schools. I don't care who it is. It's just embarrassing.
Yeah. The majority of that has been Northwestern, Purdue, Illinois, Indiana. But you're right. That's embarrassing regardless of who the worst team in the Big Ten should beat a MAC. Well, there is some overlap there. There is some reasonable overlap. Worst team in the Big Ten, MAC champion.
Yeah, but I doubt every single year it's the best team in the MAC is playing the worst team in the Big Ten. I imagine there's some crossover upsets in there. Like that year Minnesota lost to Bowling Green. They weren't the worst team
They were 9-4. Yeah, Miami lost to App State in a bowl game to finish 11-3, and they won the MAC. They beat Toledo in the championship game.
Anyway, Mark, that's all I got to talk to you about.
All right, DeReal. Appreciate you showing up and enlightening us on some Northwestern odds in Vegas. I did not anticipate that. I was going to thumb my way through the Athlon. I posted something earlier today. This drives me nuts looking at these magazines and really any lazy analysis I jump on because I just think that people should be better informed, more professional than this. So I read this in Athlon. Athlon, if they get word of this, will probably never invite me to do anything. I was invited by Lindy's to put together their all ACC team. So the Lindy's all ACC team, courtesy the voice of college football. So pick up a Lindy's, look at the all ACC team. I've not looked at the Lindy's. I've come across it. I walked past it a few times and it didn't connect. Oh yeah, I should check the ACC team because I put it together. So we did enjoy that process and working on the first, second, and third team for the all ACC team on Lindy's. Now, in regards to Athlons, I posted this on X earlier today because this kind of statement is just worthless. And there's only so much here. You know, if you're looking at let's say Washington, got the Washington Huskies here, and there's one page, and by the time you put a depth chart and the top 10 recruits list and the 24 schedule and the 23 results and all of that, by the time you do all of that, there's very little analysis here. I could write these things in 20 minutes. I'm somewhat exaggerating. 45 minutes. And I wish I had my glasses. So I read this concerning, I believe, TCU. I don't know what genius put this together. Quote, if this defense, the TCU defense, can apply more pressure on the quarterback, not get beat as much in the passing game, and create turnovers after ranking number 115 in the country in takeaways, it should be much improved. Oh, really? That's like in watching games on Saturday. I don't know how many times, both in the booth, going to halftime, coming out of halftime, or back at the studio. And I do my very best to avoid studio shows on college football Saturdays. I just want to watch football from noon until the time we take your calls at approximately 11 p.m. Eastern time. I just want to watch football. I don't want to hear anybody's analysis outside of really good game analysis. Joel Klatt, Dusty Dvorak, Greg McElroy, Tom Luganbill, those guys. Outside of that, I don't want to hear these clowns in the studio because all I hear is, let's run through the halftime stats. Oh, Penn State's rushed 13 times for 18 yards. What are they going to have to do in the second half to have a shot against Michigan? Well, they're going to have to run the ball better and find some running lanes and get some push up front and run the ball better. Oh, really? So that we don't like to hear. We run a smarter show here at the Voice of College Football. So we do appreciate everyone being here because this is for the smart fan. And if you're not a smart fan, don't go anywhere. You'll become a smart fan here at the Voice of College Football. So we welcome everyone. Everyone is welcome. Let's see what, since we're on the topic of athlons, we're going to go directly to Big Ten head coaches or coaches, period. Typically, I believe, assistant coaches and what they had to say about the various teams in the Big Ten. So it's story time here. Illinois, anonymous Big Ten assistant coach says, quote, Brett Bielema might not be on the hot seat, but this is definitely a prove-it season for him. That statement contradicts itself just in and of itself. If it's not a prove-it season, that means he's going to have other seasons in which he could. Okay. It feels like they lost their good momentum with their staff and their roster about 2 seasons back. Brett built the program back up by finding and developing a lot of local and regional guys instead of swinging and missing in places like Texas and Florida. They've lost some key in-state battles recently that hurt them. The Donovan Leary kid could push Luke Altmaier. That could really be an interesting quarterback battle to watch. This isn't a bad roster at all, but if they have another losing season, the momentum will be gone. Indiana. We all want to hear about Indiana. I bet you've already spent hours dissecting the Indiana roster and personnel like I have. But I will here at some point. This is about Indiana. Quote, there's a lot of talk about the program for the first time since any of us can remember. Kurt Signetti, is a really good hire. It shows that the school wants to be competitive and respectable in football. They're taking football seriously in NIL too. They brought in a few studs from James Madison, and they've worked the portal well. The competition level in this league is still above them, but they should look more talented, especially on offense. The MAC quarterback, Curtis Rourke, is pretty solid. If you're setting reasonable year one expectations, I'd look for them to build an offensive identity to help recruiting. That's on Indiana. There's a lot of talk about this program for the first time since any of us can remember. How about going into 2021 after they went 6-1 and were in the top 10 in the country the year before? Iowa, quote, everything here is automatic except the offense. Ha! They're a premier development in-depth program at how they scout, build, and develop on defense and special teams. It's just the offensive component. How much is new offensive coordinator Tim Lester really going to affect this program? How much can Cade McNamara do coming off the injury? This better be an open competition. And I believe Kirk Ferentz has confirmed that the quarterback situation will be an open competition. So I do believe that that will be the case. How long have we been on? 1:30. Okay. Are they going to come out in 11 personnel on first down like Tim Lester did at Central or Western Michigan when he went 3-4 wide receivers consistently? This is one of the best tight end programs in the history of the game. I don't think anyone really knows what it's going to look like, but the idea that head coach Kirk Ferentz's son was the whole problem on the offense, no way. I can agree with that. It was a big part of the issue on offense. We've taken a couple deep dives with our buddy Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye at the Storm over on the Iowa channel. Check it out the last couple of weeks. We looked at the wide receiver position under Kirk Ferentz for the past, 23, 24 years, going back to 1999. And then Corey was able to parlay that with the help of myself, but I lean on Corey for the Iowa analysis there. Parlay that into what does the wide receiver position look like at Iowa right now? And basically, it's a joke. It's a joke. Quarterback position. We looked at quarterbacks this past Tuesday at 5:30 Eastern. Join us every Tuesday. And we did the same thing. We went through all the starting quarterbacks, the high points, the low points, the good points, how they were developed during the entire Kirk Ferentz era. Then moved into the current situation, of course. You got Cade McNamara. Cade McNamara has not been healthy for a season since 2021. The last 2 seasons, he's been hobbling around. He couldn't even play much football in the spring. Now they brought in Brendan Sullivan, and I know that he is not a top-end talent, but 69% completion percentage in Big Ten play in 200 pass attempts. It's pretty good. So hopefully that's an open competition, and Brendan Sullivan may surprise some people and be the starting quarterback for this football team. All right, not going to go through all the coaching comments for all the teams this week. We've got plenty of time as we go through the summer. Again, our intent tonight was to have on Tony Altimore. Not Tony's fault, my fault. So we will get together with Tony next week. What we are doing, everybody check this out, because the show that we put together a couple nights ago on the ACC channels, Miami, that was Miami and Clemson, I think, put together. Memphis, Miami, Clemson, and Florida State the other night. Check out that deep dive. We go through the academics, the budgets, the athletic prowess, the championships, the winning percentages, the academic rates, admissions, media. We go through everything conceivable. And we did it, of course, with the upheaval going on currently in the ACC and what that could look like in regards to, I truly believe that Florida State and Clemson can almost select where they're going to land. Miami and North Carolina are safe. They're fine. They will be playing power conference football, no doubt. Virginia Tech, NC State, Louisville, they should be fine. Then, now they may not get their choice. They may be relegated to the Big 12, probably will be, but then it gets a little dicey after that. Georgia Tech, they'll probably make it. Maybe we'll make a percentage chart, and we will explain why the various schools have a certain percentage chance of surviving in the Power 2, Power 3. But if you're Boston College, Wake Forest, Syracuse, it doesn't look good. Duke may be saved by academics and basketball. So we do appreciate you being here, the voice of college football. And again, keep those notifications open. You got to subscribe. Please hit the bell for the notifications. That way you know when we go live, because football's almost here. And when it's football time, that's time to be locked in here at the Voice of College Football, because we're going to go full throttle all the time. For example, this Big Ten live show, Friday nights, right? Starting with Big Ten Media Days, we will be live every day. Every day, a Big Ten live show. Every day. Starting with SEC Media Days, an SEC live show every day. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. USC call-in show coming up at 9. Check that mark. 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. They changed the time this week. The USC call-in show with Tim and with Matt. They're the best. You'll love it. Get on over to the USC channel and check it out. Big 12 power rankings. I just released those. Check those out. I've got somebody I named as a sleeper in the Big 12. So check it out, the Big 12 power rankings right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you so much being here, and we will see you soon. Love what I do as a sports commentator. I have definitely been blessed. I enjoy my career. But I got to say, if I could turn back time, I would learn the business side of sports management, how to manage people, how to manage projects, how to manage situations. And then there's also those times in which you feel stuck in a job, stuck in a career, just feeling that there's a dead end and wondering and waiting, when is that break going to happen? Well, unfortunately, I got to tell you, that break is not coming unless you make it happen. Sports is your passion. You love it, you live it, you breathe it. Why not make your passion your career? Introducing Southern New Hampshire University, our sponsor. At SNHU, you will learn the business side of sports, sports management principles, and how to gather and analyze data. This degree will help you prepare for a career as an athletic director, sports information director, marketing manager, and other exciting roles in the sports industry. You'll be able to tap into SNHU's network of graduates working in sports-related organizations. You'll also have the opportunity to take advantage of an internship or an experiential learning course within the field. Your courses are taught by faculty with real-world experience, so you'll have opportunities to connect with people in the industry. And when you graduate, SNHU will be right there to help you with your job search. SNHU is accredited, nonprofit, and has radically affordable tuition. SNHU was voted one of the country's most innovative universities by U.S. News and World Report. Just go to snhu.edu/VOCFB. The link's also in my description section down below to see if you qualify for SNHU's sports management program. You might be eligible for financial aid or have existing college credits that could fast-track your degree at SNHU. Click the link to get started. Your exciting sports management degree at SNHU awaits you. Do it now.